Design heuristics can be used in multiple ways and can be flexibly introduced alongside existing curricula and design methods. They can support the generation of new ideas, the development of ideas, encouraging iteration and traversal of the solution space, and the evaluation and redesign of existing solutions. In this lesson, we focus on cultivating innovation in your STEM classroom using the design heuristics and showing options of using the design heuristics for different ways. You will be encouraged to consider explicit strategies for incorporating design heuristics into your classroom. Specifically, we discussed design heuristic pedagogy. For 1, idea initiation, generating ideas from scratch. 2, idea development, refining existing ideas. And 3, subcomponent design, decomposing the design solution criteria into functions and generating ideas for each of those functions, which can then be combined to develop new ideas. We also discuss how each of these lessons can be used for individual and team idea generation. Following the lesson, you will reflect on what portions of your curriculum could be supported by the design heuristics method, and what practices might need to be altered. Here we discuss 3 lessons and modifications that can be made to each of them to fit your course and your context. The first lesson will focus on idea initiation. Designers often struggle with generate solutions from scratch. In this lesson, students create new designs using design heuristic cards for a given or existing design task. This concept generation lesson emphasizes the ability to continue generating new and different ideas and allows students to see how possible it is to generate a large quantity and variety of ideas for any given design task. In our research, we've seen that designers use design heuristics to generate ideas from scratch. For example, in the design of a way to cook using solar energy, this designer used the design heuristic repeat, by repeating the number of mirrors to increase the reflection on the surface of the lens to collect more sunlight. He used the design heuristic use multiple components for one function, by having both the lens and mirrors to gather sunlight. He used the design heuristic cover or wrap to cover the inner surface with black insulation material. He used the design heuristic add motion by adding 360-degree rotation capability to the lens so that the user could adjust the angle based on the direction of the sunlight. And he used the design heuristic utilize opposite surface by putting mirrors inside of an enclosed space. The idea initiation lesson plans show how to use design heuristics in creating new ideas. The learning goals for this lesson include: students are able to produce multiple concepts using design heuristic cards. Students are able to generate a diverse set of ideas using design heuristic cards. The foundational lesson for idea initiation with design heuristics is discussed on the following slides. The recommended sequence for this activity is: 1. Introduction to design heuristics. 2. Practice activity and reflection. And 3. Idea generation session with design heuristics. The first part of this lesson is an overview of best practices in idea generation and an introduction to the design heuristics tool. Lesson 3 included example slides for each of these. These slides can be used for your classroom purposes as well. This is one of the slides instructors can use to show the design heuristics tool. The instructor also asks students to review a subset of cards. 7 to 10 is a good number in our experience, before starting working with them on generating solutions. The instructor then provides students with an easy entry design task. This is a fairly simple design task where students aren't invested in the outcome and there aren't complex technical issues involved. This is an example of an easy entry design task that we use. It is the same task you generated ideas for in Lesson 3. Feel free to use this task to develop your own. Remember, simple is best in this practice scenario. Before students begin the practice, the instructor reminds students of some of best practices in idea generation. 1. Generate many concepts as you can. Don't focus on feasibility or evaluate your concepts. 3. Draw quick sketches with short descriptions that describe the core idea. Feel free to add to this list based on other best practices in ideation that you emphasize in your own course. The instructor then facilitates a reflection session, asking students to 1. Share ideas they generated so that other students can see how the design heuristics were applied and the variety of ideas that result. 2. Consider how their idea process changed, so they can realise tools help steer their thoughts in new ways. 3. Discuss how they use the cards so that other students can see that there are a variety of approaches to using the tool. And 3. Offer the opportunity for students to ask questions about the design heuristics. The next step is the real ideation session, where students generate ideas to a design problem they are working on as part of the course or a given, more technical design problem provided by the instructor. In Lesson 3, we used a design problem on ways to cook using solar energy. You are welcome to use this problem if you like. In class, it is often difficult to give students a lot of time for idea generation, but we recommend that you do allow them to begin generating ideas here. This can be anywhere from 10 to 25 minutes. And if you have more time for students to generate ideas, that's great. We also recommend that you set a quantity goal for the number of ideas you want students to generate within the time period. The foundational lesson just described can be adapted in various ways. Here we discuss 3 ways we have added to the foundational lesson. We call these variations the shuffle, rotation, and teaming. This variation can be used to expose students to a range of design heuristic cards. The design heuristics tool is described by the instructor first, as described in the foundational idea initiation lesson. Then, students will engage in idea generation for their course or assigned problem using a card selected at random from the deck. Students attempt to generate a first idea using the card, and then move on to another card at random to attempt to create another novel concept. After doing 5 cards, ask the students to compare their concepts. How the cards impact the concept they generated. How do their concepts differ? Another variation for using the heuristics in idea initiation is called rotation. This variation combines design heuristics with an adaptation of brainwriting. This variation is useful when students are working in teams. As an aside, for all team-based ideation, we recommend, as research supports, individual idea generation first. So after students have generated ideas independently in some way, we have them join their team. Each student in the team is given a single different design heuristic. The students then generate their solutions individually without interacting with their team members. At the end of each time interval, which could be between a few minutes and 10 minutes, the students pass their card on to their neighbour, again without any verbal conversation. Each student then creates a new concept. This way, each student used the same set of design heuristics, one at a time, to continuously generate solutions. At the end of the session, students bring their ideas together and discuss how each applied the same heuristic to identify alternative solutions to the same problem. A final example variation is with one of the students taking the role of a facilitator. The facilitator brings each card to the attention of the team. He or she reads the card to the team and explains the examples on the back. Once everybody on the team understands the heuristic, they start applying it to their existing problem in a discussion manner. The focus is kept on that particular card. When the team exhausts all the ideas they can generate with that card, the facilitator moves to the next card. Again, we recommend individual idea generation before moving to a team format. The second lesson focuses on using design heuristics in idea development and transformation. In this lesson, students are asked to apply design heuristics to transform, develop, elaborate, or iterate on existing ideas, either their own or someone else's. Design heuristics can be applied at many points in design process to allow students to iterate and develop ideas. This lesson emphasizes that a single idea can be the source of many interesting novel ideas through transformations suggested by the design heuristics, and that ideas can and should evolve throughout a design process. In addition to observing design heuristics in idea initiation, in our research, we also discovered that designers use design heuristics to transform existing ideas. For example, in the first concept on the left of the slide, the designer used as a reflective fabric to collect sunlight. To generate the second concept, the designer applied the design heuristic substitute way of achieving function, as they converted the fabric into a large solar panel. In the first concept, the designer stabilized the fabric to the ground. To generate the second concept, the designer used the design heuristic make components attachable or detachable, as he made the parts attachable, detachable for portability. In the first concept, he did not consider the integration of the environment. However, to develop the second concept, he applied the design heuristic incorporate environment to integrate trees as standing components. This lesson focuses on facilitating students in building up their initial ideas as well as the ideas of others. The learning outcome for this lesson are 1. Students are able to produce multiple variations of a concept, and 2. Students are able to add and remove details of concepts and make modifications to existing ideas. The foundational lesson for idea transformation with design heuristics is included in the upcoming slides. The recommended sequence for this activity is 1. Review of design heuristics tool, 2. Examples of transformations, 3. Practice activity and reflection, and 4. Generate idea session. The instructor begins by reviewing what the design heuristics are and how they can be used. The amount of review time is dependent on when students last used the tool. Then the instructor shows students how the cards can be applied to existing concepts to generate additional concepts. In this example, coming from ways to cook food using solar energy, the same heuristic is applied twice to develop new versions of an original concept. In this example, the designer used different heuristics to develop different versions of her concept. This designer began by attaching 2 existing components to each other, a magnifying glass and a griddle, to create a surface which focused sunlight. In her second concept, she transformed the magnifying glass to a square magnifying glass attached to the griddle. In the following concept, she made the lens height adjustable, and in the fourth concept, she added sides to it to maintain the heat more effectively. She then considered portability by adding a rigid handle, which was changed to a flexible handle. The final concept also included an attachment that held utensils and a spout for draining fluids from the cooking surface. The instructor can then remind students that design heuristics can both help initiate new ideas from scratch, as in the top example, but can also help transform existing ideas generated with or without design heuristics. The middle example is a transformation from a concept generated without design heuristics, and the bottom example is a transformation from a concept generated initially from design heuristics. To practice, the instructor introduces a simple design task and provides an existing solution for the students. The instructor should direct students to apply the same card multiple times as well as use different cards. The instructor facilitates a reflection session asking questions similar to these. What ideas did you generate using the same card multiple times to transform one idea? What ideas did you generate using different cards to transform one idea? How did using design heuristics transformatively impact your ideation process? What questions do you have about using the design heuristics tool in this way? The instructor then has students transform and develop ideas to their own design problem based on the solutions they have already created. In the example on this slide, we assume the students are working on the solar cooking problem, and the students already have some initial ideas from which to build. Alternatively, students could be presented with a few example solutions and apply the design heuristics to transform these. In this first variation, called random draw, students have a subset of cards, approximately 15, chosen at random. Students pull a card at random, generate a solution by transforming an existing concept, and then shuffle their deck of cards, randomly drawing another. They then apply the card to the same or another of their existing solutions. This variation emphasises that students shouldn't rule out a card, or must apply whatever card they draw at random to explore how their designs might be transformed. This lesson can be done individually or as a team. The instructor sets a goal for a number of branches. We recommend at least 10, and students can pick what they believe to be their best idea. The instructor can also recommend an idea the team pick, especially if it is one the instructor believes students are fixated on. Students then build off the original idea and the subsequent ideas by applying design heuristic cards, one or more, to create a new branch. After the ideation, the class can discuss the variation in new concepts generated from one. Another key point is for students to recognise there are still characteristics that can be varied, even if they have decided on one concept. This variation is a combination of design heuristics and brainwriting. Each student in the team is given a different design heuristic. The students generate a solution individually without interacting with their team members. At the end of each time interval, we suggest between 5 and 10 minutes, the students pass their sketches to their neighbour in the team, again without any conversation. Then students build on the idea passed by their team member using their design heuristic card. Each student uses the same design heuristic card for each round. We suggest as many rounds as there are team members. At the end of the session, students bring their ideas together and discuss how they applied the same heuristic to different ideas and further developed the ideas. The third lesson focuses on sub-component design. In this lesson, students generate ideas the subcomponents or subfunctions of a design artifact using design heuristics. Combine the subpieces to generate ideas. This lesson emphasizes that idea generation not only happens to think of a whole idea, but also to think of parts of an idea. The learning goals for this lesson are: 1. Students are able to generate ideas using design heuristics for subcomponents or subfunctions of a design solution. And 2. Students are able to combine sub-pieces of an idea into a whole idea. The recommended sequence for this activity is: 1. Instruction on functional decomposition. 2. Review of design heuristics, if necessary. 3. Practice activity and reflection. 4. Functional decomposition of the problem. The time required to do this varies greatly with the complexity of the problem. 5. Idea generation session with design heuristics on the subcomponents. Again, the time varies based on the problem complexity. And 6. Combination of the subcomponent ideas generated with the design heuristics to form ideas. The instructor begins the lesson with instruction on functional decomposition. We do not go into depth here on the strategies for functional decomposition. The main idea of functional decomposition is that the designer breaks down the outcome goal into the functions that it must address. The time spent on this will likely vary greatly based on the design context. The instructor then reviews what design heuristics are and how they can be used. The amount of review time is dependent on when students last used the tool. To practice, the instructor introduces a simple design task. In this case, the problem has already been decomposed, so the practice is focused on generating ideas for subcomponents and combining those ideas. Students first spend 5 minutes generating ideas for the pouring mechanism, storage mechanism, and stability mechanism of a way to dispense salt and pepper. They then spend 5 minutes combining those ideas into whole concepts. The instructor facilitates a reflection session asking questions similar to these. What ideas did you generate for each of the 3 sub-functions? What ideas did you generate by combining ideas for each of the sub-functions? How did using design heuristics impact your ideation process? How did ideating on subcomponents impact on your ideation process? What questions do you have about the design heuristic tool in this way? The instructor then has students decompose the design problem into its sub-functions. This may be possible to do in a class, or it may require more time outside the class. It depends on the complexity of the problem. In the example on this slide, we are showing the solar cooking design problem and asking students to spend 10 minutes decomposing it into its functions. After functional decomposition is complete, instructors prompt students to generate ideas for each of the sub-functions. At this point, students are instructed not to worry about how these will eventually recombine, but instead focus on generating as many ideas as they can for each of the sub-functions using the design heuristics card. Again, the example here is the solar cooking problem, but this can be replaced with the design problem students are working on in class. After students have generated ideas for the sub-functions, the instructor asks them to combine their ideas for sub-functions in different ways to generate whole concepts. In this variation, students create a chart, as they would if they were doing metamorphical analysis. They write sub-functions in the first column and then ideas generated using the design heuristics for each subfunction along the row. The ideas should be drawn and described. The table cells will be sized accordingly. Students then create combinations using their charts and draw the resulting idea based on the combination. The metamorphical chart allows students to see how many different ideas are possible. This variation encourages hands-on discovery of subcomponents through physical dissection of an existing product. First, instructors ask teams to carefully dissect an existing product, sorting the components into categories or types. Then, each team member is asked to select a component or set of components. Students use the design heuristics to generate ideas for this component or set of components. Teams combine their concepts for the subcomponents at the end, generating whole ideas for the existing product. Necessary materials for this variation are product samples for each team. This variation can allow teams to work together in generating ideas. After a list of subfunctions has been generated, instructors ask the teams to divide the subfunctions among the team members. The students are asked to first generate concepts that address their subcomponent individually using the design heuristics. Then the team will form and confer with their team members to combine ideas for subfunctions and develop whole concepts. You are welcome to use these slides in your classroom and to alter them to fit your materials. In the next module, we will move from these lesson plans to discuss specifics of integrating design heuristics into your classroom.